They say you never truly know someone until you see them at their worst. My wife showed me exactly who she was when she and her friends left me stranded in another state with nothing but the clothes on my back. Let's see if he can make it back. They laughed as they drove away with my wallet, phone, and dignity. I never came back to her, but 5 years later, she found me. What she didn't know was that I wasn't the same man she abandoned. My name is Greg Harrison. I'm 45 years old and the owner, well, former owner, of Harrison Construction, once the most respected commercial building company in Portland. I built that business with my bare hands over 20 years, starting with nothing but a pickup truck and a toolbox my father left me. Back then, I was just a guy who knew how to frame a house and wasn't afraid of 16-hour days. I met Naomi at the Portland Business Excellence Awards, March 2017. I remember because we just landed the contract for the new waterfront development, the biggest project in the city that year. I was on top of the world that night. My company was being recognized. My bank account had never looked better, and I had just bought a house in the West Hills with a view that would knock your socks off. Naomi Morgan was working PR for the event. The moment she walked over with that champagne flute and congratulated me, I was hooked. Dark hair, sharp mind, and a smile that made me forget my rehearsed acceptance speech. She knew exactly who I was before introducing herself. Had done her homework on all the honorees, she said. Impressive what you've built from scratch, she told me, those green eyes locked on mine. Most men would have sold out to the big corporations by now. That's what got me. She understood the value of independence. Or so I thought. We were married 6 months later at the Cascade Mountain Lodge. My business partner, Frank, warned me we were moving too fast. Greg, buddy, you've known her half a year. What's the rush? The rush was that at 40, I finally found someone who seemed to get me. Someone who admired what I'd built and wanted to be part of it. Little did I know she wanted more than just a part. The first 2 years were everything I'd hoped for. Naomi quit her PR job, saying she wanted to support my vision. We traveled when I could get away for job sites. St. Bart's, Aspen, Tokyo. She had expensive taste, but I could afford it. I was proud to give her the life she wanted. How was I supposed to know that the moment things got tough, she'd show her true colors? That the woman who praised my work ethic would despise me for actually having to work harder when the recession hit? If I could go back, I'd listen to Frank. I'd take things slower. I'd keep my business accounts separate. But hindsight's a luxury I can't afford anymore. I spared no expense for our honeymoon. 2 weeks in Bali at a private villa that cost more per night than most people's monthly mortgage. Naomi deserved the best, I thought, and I could afford it. Harrison Construction had just secured 3 major projects that would keep us in the black for years. You work too hard, Naomi said one evening as we watched the sunset from our infinity pool, champagne in hand. We should do this more often. I laughed and pulled her close. That's what working hard is for, sweetheart. So we can enjoy moments like this. What I didn't say was that those moments were possible precisely because I didn't take 2-week vacations regularly. But that conversation could wait. Everything could wait. The emails, the contract reviews, the site inspections. For once, I had put everything on hold for someone else. When we returned to Portland, I surprised Naomi with what I thought was the perfect gift. I had purchased a lakefront property and hired an architect to design our dream home. 10,000 square feet of custom luxury, with every detail tailored to what she had casually mentioned loving over our brief courtship. This will take at least a year to build, I explained, showing her the renderings. But it'll be worth the wait. Naomi's eyes widened, not with excitement, but with something else I couldn't quite place. A year, she repeated. We're going to live in your bachelor pad for a year. My bachelor pad was a 4,000 square foot house with panoramic city views. But I swallowed my defense. I thought we could use this time to really plan every detail of the new place together. She warmed to the idea after that, especially when I gave her an essentially unlimited budget for finishes and furnishings. Within weeks, she'd hired an interior designer whose fees alone could have bought a decent car. I noticed the first red flag during a meeting with this designer, Valerie. Naomi kept referring to my house rather than our house. Small thing, maybe, but it stuck with me. Then came the credit card statements. Naomi had always enjoyed shopping, designer clothes, expensive shoes. I never minded. But now the spending had accelerated to a pace that even I found alarming. $12,000 at Nordstrom. I asked one evening, statement in hand. And one day, I needed a new wardrobe for the charity circuit. She replied without looking up from her magazine. If I'm representing Harrison Construction as your wife, I need to look the part. That was her favorite justification. Everything was an investment in my business image. The clothes, the jewelry, the country club membership I never used because I was too busy at construction sites. Even the sports car she insisted was more appropriate for a man of my stature than my trusted pickup. Looking back, I realized I wasn't just building her a dream house. I was forging my own golden handcuffs, link by exquisite link. The economic storm hit with no warning. One day, I was signing contract for new developments. The next, 3 major clients called to put their projects on indefinite hold. The housing market was showing signs of trouble, and commercial development always follows. I called an emergency meeting with my executive team. Frank, my right-hand man since day one, didn't sugarcoat it. We're looking at a 60% revenue drop. If all these postponements stick, Greg, we need to cut costs now, not later. I nodded, already calculating in my head. We'll pause the office expansion. Freeze hiring. I'll take no salary until we're back on track. That night, I sat Naomi down at our kitchen island. The dream house was halfway built, with foundation and framing complete. Every day, materials and labor costs were piling up. We need to make some changes, I said firmly. The market's turning, and cash flow is about to get tight. We should pause construction on a lake house. Her face hardened. For how long? 6 months, maybe a year, until the market stabilizes. Naomi slammed her wine glass down. A year? We've already ordered custom everything. The Italian marble, the hand-blown chandeliers, which we can store until we're ready. I countered. This isn't just a hiccup, Naomi. Economists are using the word recession. So what? You've always said Harrison Construction was recession-proof because you diversified. Was that just talk? Her words stung because there was truth in them. I had been confident, overconfident, in my company's stability. But a man adapts when circumstances change. We'll weather this, I said, but we need to be smart. Tighten our belts. She laughed bitterly. Tighten our belts? Why, you wrote a 7-figure check for that stupid fishing boat last month. The boat had been an indulgence, I admit. But it was also an investment that could be sold if absolutely necessary. I didn't say that part aloud. What I didn't know then was that Naomi had financial secrets of her own. 2 weeks later, I discovered the hidden credit cards. It started with a call from our accountant. Greg, there's a $47,000 payment to American Express that wasn't in the budget. Is this a new corporate account? It wasn't. Further digging revealed Naomi had opened 3 credit cards in the business's name, using my personal guarantee. Over $200,000 in debt that I knew nothing about. I confronted her that evening, paperwork in hand. What the hell is this? I demanded, my voice steady despite the anger boiling inside. Naomi didn't even flinch. Don't overreact. I needed to furnish the new house. With $14,000 worth of throw pillows. With a $22,000 coffee table. She folded her arms. If you had given me an adequate allowance, I wouldn't have needed to get creative. Her allowance was already $15,000 monthly. I'd never questioned her spending until now. These accounts are being closed tomorrow, I said. And we're selling the boat to pay them off. I thought that was the end of it. I was dead wrong. The next month tested every ounce of my resolve. Construction projects continued to vanish. Banks tightened lending. Developers panicked. I was fighting to keep Harrison Construction afloat, working 16-hour days to secure whatever contracts remained in the shrinking market. Meanwhile, Naomi acted like nothing had changed. The credit cards were closed, but she'd simply shifted to draining our joint account instead. Frank pulled me aside after a particularly brutal meeting with the bank. Greg, I hate to ask this, but have you considered selling? Montgomery Construction made an offer last week. Montgomery was our biggest competitor, run by a cutthroat businessman named Victor who'd been trying to absorb my company for years. Not happening, I said firmly. My father built this company. I expanded it. I'm not handing it over to Victor just because things got tough. Frank nodded, respect in his eyes. Then we need to make some hard decisions. That night, I made the hardest one of all. Our dream house, Naomi's dream house, had to go. Half finished, it was bleeding us dry with construction loans and interest payments. I arrived home late to find Naomi hosting a dinner party for people I barely knew. Designer handbags and luxury watches adorned our guests, while caterers served champagne that cost more than what I was paying my workers. I maintained my composure, shaking hands and exchanging pleasantries until the last guest departed. Then I confronted her. "Do you have any idea what we're facing?" I asked, my voice low but firm. "The company might not make payroll this month." Naomi rolled her eyes. "You always exaggerate. Every business has ups and downs. This isn't a down, it's a cliff. We need to sell the lake house project." Her eyes widened in genuine shock. "Absolutely not. My friends have already seen the plans. We've already told everyone about the housewarming." "Your friends won't pay our mortgage if the company folds," I countered. "I found a buyer willing to take it as is. We'll lose money, but we'll stop the bleeding." "You're pathetic," she spat. "A real man wouldn't give up so easily." I didn't take the bait. A real man does what's necessary to protect what matters. The company employs 60 families. They matter more than your social standing. The next morning, I made an appointment with Victor Montgomery. His offer was predatory, but included enough cash to clear our most pressing debts and retain a minority stake. Most importantly, it preserved jobs for our employees. As I drove home to tell Naomi, my phone rang. It was our bank manager, panic in his voice. "Mr. Harrison, there's been a large wire transfer from your home equity line. $750,000 authorized this morning. We tried to verify, but the paperwork seemed in order." My blood ran cold. The home equity line was secured against our primary residence, the one asset I'd considered untouchable. I found Naomi packing suitcases when I burst through the door. "Where is it?" I demanded. "Where's what?" She replied coolly. "The $750,000 you stole from our equity line." She smiled thinly. "Safe. Unlike anything tied to your failing company." I noticed her laptop open on the bed, showing a bank account I'd never seen before. I lunged for it, but she slammed it shut. "You've lost it, Greg," she said. "I'm staying with Valerie until you calm down." I blocked the doorway. "Not with my money, you're not. Transfer it back now." "Your money," she laughed. "I'm your wife. Half of everything is mine by law. I'm just taking it before you gamble it all away on a lost cause." In that moment, I knew our marriage was over. But the fight for my company's survival was just beginning. I spent the next few days sleeping at the office, reviewing legal options with my attorney. The $750,000 Naomi had transferred was beyond immediate recovery. She'd moved it offshore through a series of transactions designed to obscure its destination. My lawyer was confident we could eventually reclaim it through divorce proceedings, but eventually wouldn't help my immediate cash flow crisis. Frank found me asleep at my desk one morning, blueprints spread across the surface. "You need to go home, shower, and put on a clean shirt," he said, tossing a granola bar onto the desk. "We have that meeting with Pacific Northwest developers at 11. I'd forgotten completely. P&D was one of the few development groups still launching projects despite the downturn. Luxury vacation properties for the ultra-wealthy who remained insulated from economic turbulence. I rushed home, hoping Naomi would be out. No such luck. She sat at the kitchen island, casually sipping coffee, as if she hadn't just demolished our financial security. "Nice of you to come home," she said, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "Your lawyer's threats are getting tiresome." I ignored her, heading straight for the shower. When I emerged, she was holding an embossed envelope. "This came for us," she said. "Melissa's destination wedding. Aspen in 2 weeks." Melissa was Naomi's college roommate, now married to a hedge fund manager. Under normal circumstances, I'd have begged off, citing work commitments. But the invitation gave me an idea. "We should go," I said, surprising her. "Really?" Her skepticism was evident. "I thought you'd be too busy dealing with your difficulties." "P&D's chairman has a place in Aspen," I replied smoothly. "I've been trying to get a meeting with him for months. This could be perfect timing." It wasn't a lie. Richard Dawson, P&D's reclusive billionaire chairman, did indeed have an Aspen compound. More importantly, he was known to frequent the same exclusive resort where Melissa's wedding would be held. Naomi's eyes narrowed. "Fine, but I'm not pretending everything's peachy between us for your business prospects." "Wouldn't dream of it," I replied. "But since you've helped yourself to a significant portion of our assets, you might consider that your future lifestyle depends on my ability to rebuild." She flinched slightly, the first sign that reality might be penetrating her entitlement. Over the next 2 weeks, we maintained an icy détente. I focused on keeping Harrison Construction alive, securing just enough work to prevent layoffs. Naomi continued her social rounds as if nothing had changed, though I noticed her shopping bags had grown smaller and less frequent. As we boarded the plane to Aspen, Frank called with unexpected news. The sale to Montgomery fell through, he said. Their financing collapsed. My stomach dropped. That deal had been our safety net. What about the Westlake project? I asked, naming our last major development. The client's wavering. They're getting cold feet about breaking ground during a recession. I ended the call as we fastened our seatbelts, my mind racing. The Aspen trip had just transformed from a networking opportunity to a desperate Hail Mary. If I couldn't connect with Dawson and secure P&D's business, Harrison Construction might not survive the month. Naomi, absorbed in a magazine beside me, remained oblivious to how close we were to total collapse. Or perhaps she simply didn't care. The Aspen Resort was everything you'd expect for $2,000 a night. I spent most events networking, finally connecting with Richard Dawson, P&D's chairman, who recognized me from previous projects. Your company built the Portland Heights Medical Center. Impressive work, he said at the bar. We talked construction and market conditions for an hour before he invited me to his home the following afternoon. It was the opportunity one needed. When I told Naomi, she wasn't pleased. You're ditching the wedding reception for a business meeting? She slurred, wine glass in hand. This could save the company, I replied quietly. My meeting with Dawson exceeded expectations. By late afternoon, we had the framework of a deal that would keep Harrison Construction afloat through the recession. I returned elated to find Naomi leaving for a post-wedding party downtown. We'll talk about your meeting tomorrow, she said dismissively. Hours passed. At 2 a.m., Naomi called, her voice thick with alcohol. We're heading back now. Valerie's driving. I dozed off waiting. When morning sunlight woke me, her bed remained untouched. Calls to her phone went straight to voicemail. By noon, worry overcame annoyance. I contacted the front desk. Your wife checked out this morning, sir, the clerk informed me. She and her party departed around 9 a.m. That's impossible. Her things are still here. Only a small suitcase was taken. The rest remains in your suite. I checked my wallet, empty. My phone chimed with a bank alert. A $5,000 ATM withdrawal in downtown Aspen, maxing out our daily limit. When I finally reached Valerie's husband, he confirmed my suspicion. They thought it would be funny, he said, embarrassment evident. Leaving you stranded in Aspen. Naomi said something about seeing if you could make it back on your own after how you've handled the business. As his words registered, I heard Naomi's distinctive laugh in the background. Let's see if he can make it back, she crowed, followed by more laughter before the call disconnected. I stood at the window of our luxury room with no wallet, no credit cards, and no way home. A successful businessman reduced to nothing by his wife's cruel prank. In that moment, something hardened inside me. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about dignity. Pride is expensive. Standing in that luxury suite, I had two options. Call someone back home who could wire me money, or figure this out myself. I chose the latter. I walked to the front desk, my head high despite the humiliation burning in my gut. I need to speak with the manager, I told the clerk. My wallet's been stolen. The manager, a sharp-eyed woman named Eleanor, listened to my abbreviated story. I left out the part about my wife's betrayal, focusing instead on my meeting with Richard Dawson. Mr. Dawson is a valued resort patron, she said, considering me. I'll contact his office to verify your story. 20 minutes later, she returned. Mr. Dawson's assistant confirmed your meeting. We can extend a limited credit line until your replacement cards arrive. It was something, but not enough to get home. I thanked her and retreated to consider my options. My phone rang. Dawson himself. Harrison, heard you've hit a snag. What do you need? Men like Richard Dawson don't hand out charity. Every favor comes with expectations. But I was out of options. A flight back to Portland. I answered honestly. And perhaps a small advance on our potential contract. There was a pause. The flight, certainly. The advance, that depends. Can you stick around another day? I'd like to see how you handle adversity before we finalize our arrangement. A test. Of course it was. I'll make it work, I replied. For the next 24 hours, I navigated Aspen with borrowed cash and hotel credit. I had my shoes shined at the resort's shop, borrowed a tie from the lost and found, and arrived at Dawson's estate looking every bit the successful businessman, despite having nothing but the clothes on my back. Impressive, Dawson said when I arrived. Most men would have called their lawyer and started threatening lawsuits. Lawsuits don't build buildings, I replied, and they don't solve immediate problems. We spent the afternoon finalizing details. The deal was smaller than I'd hoped, but it included an immediate deposit substantial enough to keep Harrison Construction operating while we restructured. Your wife did you a favor, Dawson remarked as his driver prepared to take me to the airport. She showed you what she's made of before she could do worse damage. I nodded, though the wound was still raw. I prefer straightforward problems I can solve with hard work. That attitude will serve you well in our partnership, he said, shaking my hand. On the flight home, I made two decisions. First, I would redirect all my focus to rebuilding my company with this new opportunity. Second, I would never again allow anyone, especially Naomi, to have the power to destroy what I'd built. By the time the plane landed in Portland, I had the framework of a plan. Frank was waiting at the terminal, confusion on his face. Naomi called the office looking for you, he said. Said you two got separated in Aspen. I laughed, the sound hollow, even to my own ears. That's one way to put it. I'll explain later. Right now, we have work to do. I didn't go home that night or the next. Instead, I executed my plan from a hotel room downtown, methodically reclaiming control of my life. 5 years passed in a blur of focused determination. The partnership with Dawson's P&D saved Harrison Construction from bankruptcy, though not without sacrifice. I downsized operations, sold assets, and worked 7 days a week to honor every contract. The divorce was as ugly as expected. Naomi hired a shark of an attorney who tried to claim half the company's value, including the new Dawson contracts. She's entitled to her share of your marital assets, her lawyer argued in mediation. She's entitled to half of what was left after she emptied our accounts and left me stranded. I countered. The judge ultimately agreed with me. Her abandonment in Aspen, documented by hotel records and bank withdrawals, undermined her claims of deserving ongoing support. The divorce settlement was modest. She kept the jewelry and art she'd already taken, plus a one-time payment that barely covered her legal fees. I never moved back into our old house. Too many memories. Instead, I sold it and purchased a smaller place on the outskirts of Portland. Simple, functional mine. By year 3, Harrison Construction had regained its footing. The recession had thinned out our competition, and our reputation for reliability during difficult times attracted new clients. I rebuilt my team carefully, prioritizing loyalty and work ethic over credentials. Frank remained my right hand, turning down offers from larger firms to stay with me. Those corporate outfits are just waiting for the next crash, he'd say. I'll stick with the devil I know. By year 5, we were stronger than before the downturn. Our projects were more selective, but more profitable. I maintained a lean operation with minimal debt, a lesson harshly learned. I dated occasionally, but nothing serious. Until Jamie. We met when her environmental consulting firm reviewed one of our projects. Smart, straightforward, and completely self-sufficient, she was everything Naomi wasn't. You should see your face when you talk about work, she told me on our third date. Like a kid with his favorite toy. Work saved me, I replied simply. When everything else fell apart, it was the one thing I could control. She understood that kind of dedication. Our relationship developed slowly, built on mutual respect rather than flash and excitement. After a year together, she moved into my house, bringing just 2 suitcases and her dog, a stark contrast to Naomi's moving vans full of possessions. I was at our Portland Heights job site when Frank called me over to his truck one afternoon. You need to see this, he said, showing me his phone. It was a local news article. Former socialite faces eviction from luxury apartment. The photo showed Naomi, noticeably aged, outside an upscale building downtown. The article detailed her financial troubles, unpaid rent, and series of failed relationships with wealthy men. Karma's a patient executioner, Frank commented. I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no pity. Naomi had become a stranger whose choices had nothing to do with my life. That evening, as Jamie and I grilled steaks on the deck, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. A woman's voice, tentative yet familiar. Greg? It's Naomi. I need to talk to you. Greg? It's Naomi. I need to talk to you. Her voice jolted me back 5 years in an instant. Jamie noticed my expression and raised an eyebrow questioningly. Who needs to talk at 8 p.m. on a Tuesday? I asked into the phone, keeping my tone neutral. Please, Naomi said, a tremor in her voice I'd never heard before. Just 15 minutes. I'm outside your office downtown. My office had moved 3 years ago. How did you get this number? Frank's assistant. Please, Greg. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. I glanced at Jamie, who was watching me carefully. I covered the phone. It's Naomi. She wants to meet. To her credit, Jamie simply nodded. Do what you need to do. I uncovered the phone. Not tonight, Naomi. I'm home with my partner. I can give you 15 minutes tomorrow at noon. The coffee shop across from my office. The pause told me she'd expected immediate compliance. The old Greg would have jumped at her command. Noon. Thank you, she finally said, disconnecting. Jamie set her wine glass down. Are you okay with seeing her? Honestly, I'm curious more than anything, I replied. 5 years of silence, and now she needs something. Classic Naomi. The next day, I arrived at the coffee shop precisely at noon. Punctuality was a point of pride for me, a discipline Naomi had always mocked. She was already there, nervously shredding a napkin. The years hadn't been as kind to her as her carefully applied makeup attempted to disguise. Designer clothes hung loosely on her thinner frame. Thank you for coming, she said as I sat down. No hug attempted, which was wise. 15 minutes, I reminded her, setting my phone on the table as a timer. Naomi took a deep breath. I've been trying to reach you for months. Calling your old numbers, your old office. I even drove by our house, but strangers live there now. It hasn't been our house for years, I said evenly. What do you want, Naomi? Her eyes welled with tears that once would have moved me. I made terrible mistakes, Greg. The worst was leaving you in Aspen. It was supposed to be a joke. We were coming back that afternoon. But Valerie got a call that her son was in the hospital, so we rushed to Denver. By the time everything was sorted out, you were gone. A convenient story, undermined by that laughter I'd heard over the phone. And the money you took, the cleaned-out accounts? Those mistakes, too. She looked down. I was angry about the business problems. I thought you were hiding assets before a divorce. You're still a lousy liar, I noted, checking my watch. 7 minutes left. Get to the point. Her facade cracked. I need help, Greg. I'm being evicted. I have nowhere to go. And there it was, the real reason for this reunion. Not remorse, not love. Need. What happened to Jonathan? I asked, naming the investment banker she'd moved in with after our divorce. He left last year. The market turned, and so did he. Her bitter laugh held no humor. I've had a string of bad luck. But if you could just help me get back on my feet. No, I said, my voice firm but not cruel. Your choices led you here, Naomi. Mine led me somewhere else. Our paths don't cross anymore. Naomi's face crumpled at my refusal. You really won't help me? After 15 years together. 5 years married, 5 years apart, and 5 years of silence. I corrected. I'm not responsible for your choices, Naomi. I have nowhere to go, she whispered. I sighed, not from sympathy, but from recognition. This manipulation tactic was familiar. There are housing assistance programs. I'll have my assistant email you information. Charity. Her disgust was genuine. That's beneath me. Pride is expensive, I replied, echoing my thoughts from that Aspen hotel room years ago. Good luck, Naomi. I left without looking back. The weight I'd carried for years had finally lifted, not from confronting her, but from realizing her opinion no longer mattered to me. That evening, I told Jamie everything. She listened without interruption, then asked, Do you regret how you handled it? No, I answered honestly. I offered what I would to any stranger in need, information that could help. Nothing more, nothing less. She nodded, understanding the significance. You've closed that chapter. The next morning, Frank called with news. Dawson just approved the expansion project. It's the biggest contract we've ever had. I smiled. Tell the team, we're celebrating tonight. Dinner's on me. That evening, surrounded by the people who'd stood by me through the darkest times, I reflected on the journey. Harrison Construction wasn't just surviving anymore. It was thriving. We had built something stronger from the ruins, something that couldn't be destroyed by one person's selfish actions. After dinner, I took Jamie to the waterfront park where a new cultural center, our most recent project, stood illuminated against the night sky. I have something to ask you, I said, taking her hand. If it's about moving in together, I already did that a year ago, she teased. Something more permanent, I replied, revealing a simple diamond ring. I built my company from the ground up twice. I'd like to build a life with you the same way, carefully, intentionally, to last. Her eyes glistened as she nodded. Yes, absolutely yes. As we walked along the waterfront, I realized that being stranded in Aspen had been the best thing that could have happened to me. It had forced me to rebuild on a stronger foundation, not just my business, but my life. Some lessons can only be learned through loss. Mine taught me what truly matters, not possessions or prestige, but integrity, resilience, and the people who stand beside you when everything falls apart.
Bye.